Thank you, all of you, for joining tonight. And thank you so much, Jason, for returning to my kitchen, and Kristen for returning to my kitchen. I'm so excited about moving into sort of small little collaborations and easy access conversations that maybe we wouldn't have necessarily in the kitchen, but I really like the informality of the kitchen. But where, so that it invites all of us to have these important conversations with our family and with our friends, and to make it accessible. Both of you, I loved having you in my space, in my kitchen. I loved talking to both of you. For those of you who weren't at the first talks, Jason is a certified Mayo Clinic health coach, health and wellness coach. And I'm loving that because I'm going to ask you a question about that shortly. And was in the kitchen, I think, just over a year ago, where we discussed the holistic nature of wellness, and that it really is a holistic thing indeed. And then he kindly introduced me to Kristen Tripp, who is and wait for it, wellness financial coach. I mean, don't you love that oxymoron? It's like, which is kind of ridiculous that we say it's an oxymoron, because it shouldn't be. But I think people are now recognizing that in this day and age, that it's so important to see things holistically. So welcome to the two of you. Delighted to have you back. Jason, I'm going to start off with you and just ask you to just fill us in terms of where you are currently, and since we last spoke, in terms of how things have progressed in the past year, looking at wellness.
Well, it's a bit of a big question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, let me think about that for a moment. I don't, wellness hasn't changed, that's for sure. I know the nature of wellness hasn't changed. And I, in a year, have been exploring that deeply in my own life and with each and every one of my clients. So I don't think I have an answer to how wellness has changed necessarily. I guess my experience of it has deepened.
Yes, that's what I meant. And something that I was thinking of, the other day, because wellness is now a word that is so widely used, certainly a lot more so than in the past decade, right? Or 2 decades. And you get wellness coaches and health coaches. Same, but different. Often the same, right? But would you care to go into to explaining or going into the difference, how you see it?
Yeah, I think they function nearly identically. And like, if you took a sample and 10 people identified as health coaches and 10 people identified as wellness coaches, and then you listed the characteristics of how they operated, I think you'd find some health coaches operating with the same characteristics as wellness coaches, and vice versa. It's almost more of a word preference. And to make that clear, in the United States anyway, the leading organization is called the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. So they felt compelled to include both. Yeah, so I don't see any practical difference. I prefer the word wellness over health because it has more holistic connotations. Yes. And it has more positive connotations. The way the word health has evolved, it generally means, at least to my ears, the absence of sickness.
Okay.
And wellness, I think, has more implications of the presence of wellness.
Yeah. There
Something
is
like
more of a, when I hear health, it's often my association with it is, it is, all on all levels, but it's often associated to a physical health.
That's right. That's why we also have the word happy, right? Because people will say healthy and happy. and they'll
Yes.
associate healthy with physical and happy with emotional
Yeah.
or mental.
Yes.
And wellness, that's a neat way. I think wellness sometimes the word wellness does a good job of putting the concepts of happy and healthy together and sort of
Yes.
making them one.
Yes. No, I love that. Absolutely. And it's so important in terms of where we are right now. And Kristen, I love that you have linked to unlikely sort of subjects, finance and wellness together, or health together. For those of us that, or those in the house that didn't get to meet you initially, how did those two areas come together for you in your life? How did you merge them so beautifully?
Well, it's interesting. It actually segues really nicely off of what Jason was saying, because for a long time, I was doing car and home insurance, home and auto, and life and disability insurance. And then eventually I made it into the financial security sector. And I was in the financial industry selling insurances, selling securities, helping people set up 401ks, helping people with all of these different like financial vessels for retirement, really. And I realized that, a lot of times when you sit down and you talk to somebody about their overall financial being, wellness, health, whatever you kind of want to insert there, you're doing it in the scope of the product that you're being told you have to sell. And even though you have a fiduciary duty to uphold, so you need to be giving people things that are going to support them, you're still linked to a company that is paying you based off of the products that you're selling them. And so a lot of times people's advice is always coming at an angle. No matter how amazing the person is, it just is. So I just found that I wasn't able to really help people with what would be overall successful for them financially with just kind of trying to sell them different things. Not that that can't help people, because it totally can. So what I decided to do is, where I was an agent or an advisor, I decided that I wanted to move into a more coaching realm, where I wasn't selling anybody a product per se, but I was really just giving people advice that was completely unbiased from any larger entity that is paying my salary based off of the things that I'm selling someone else. So when I'm looking at the financial wellness piece of things, I'm really trying to help people realize, with the given choices they're making in their life, how will they support themselves in a way that really reflects what they want, but is also in line with the kinds of choices they're making financially. Because of course we know every job comes with a different cap of how much you'll make, and everybody has different goals. So making sure that those goals and people's reality of finances are actually aligning, so that there's more of an understanding of what is possible, what isn't, and what we need to do to make dreams and goals happen. So in that way is that wellness piece, like how are you actually using your money to best support yourself in your given reality or situation.
That's amazing. I mean, while I'm listening, and I'm sure you've come across it as well, Jason, all three of us are in the wellness industry, in terms of, I teach yoga, but I also do a lot of therapeutic work with people, in terms of the umbrella or the basic idea of wellness. When people think of what I'm offering is the physical practice, and then they do a one-on-one session with me, and it's got very little to do with the physical, but a lot to do with the mental and the emotional. So to get people to understand how to make better choices, I'm sure for both of you, there's a lot of coaching in terms of helping them see where they are mentally and emotionally. Do you want to speak more about that, Jason?
Yeah, I think a good jumping off point into what you're talking about, Kristen touched on, and essentially helping people get very clear on their values. Oftentimes, this is certainly true for me at some point in my life, we're living sort of on autopilot. We're sort of living the way those around us are living, and we haven't given much thought to what truly matters to me. And that can sound very simple, but it's extremely powerful, and I'd consider it the foundation of certainly the foundation of my coaching. I think it would be the foundation or an important piece, at least, of most coaching, because person doesn't know where they want to go if they don't know what's important to them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a neat thing that links the physical, emotional, and mental, and it's a neat thing that links happiness and health that we were talking about. And I think it's a neat thing that links, there's another sort of unnecessary separation. I think we often orient ourselves in life in, there's sort of like physical health, physical wellness, relationships, and work. And work includes our relationship with money, and relationships and work and chores and our relationship with money affect our wellness in very substantial ways, and not just the happy part of wellness, and not just the emotional and mental part of wellness. You know, people that have less stress from work and less stress from money have less diabetes, have less type 2 diabetes, have less cardiovascular disease, have longer lives. Essentially, and you can think about this in various ways. I think a neat way of thinking of it is almost like on the cellular level. Each and every one of the cells in my body, when a need is being met, those cells are at ease. And when a need is going unmet, those cells are without ease, which is the sort of the root of that word we have, dis-ease, dis-ease with a hyphen, right? So I think very simply of holistic wellness like this, we have a set of known needs, and some of them are very common to us as humans, and some of them are unique, right? Like someone might have a real need for artistic expression that not everyone shares. People have different levels of needs for connection. That's where we have like that, the like introversion, extroversion scale, right? When we meet most of our needs most of the time, we're like a house plant that's perked up and doing well. And when we're not meeting enough of our needs enough of the time, we're like that house plant that's wilting because it's not getting enough water or enough sunlight, or meeting one of its other needs. So I know that was a bit of a long answer, but I think I'll tie it back to that values idea is a nice anchor, because when we're running around life going, what do I need more of? When we can connect that to what our values are, we have much more clear answers on what we need.
That's brilliant. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. Do you find that or what is the challenge when someone's coming to you as a health coach and they wanting their body to be healthy, their physical body to be healthy, and they haven't actually recognized that how they think or their attitudes or their emotional sort of maybe challenges in their life are the things that are in their way of their health? How do you approach that?
My coaching is extremely collaborative, and it's sort of a mutual discovery process. So it's less about me pointing out things to them and giving advice, and it's more helping them discover these kinds of things. So try to think of a tangible example. A tangible example in the realm of what you're talking about is the common challenge that's usually called emotional eating. And so someone is, which has different, the different things can drive it. Maybe the most common is often called stress eating, right? So someone's eating junk food in the afternoon when they're not hungry, or they've had enough to eat for dinner, but they're still eating late into the evening as a way of assuaging stress or boredom or loneliness or fatigue. And people often think of that as a food problem. And they often try to fix it with a food solution. So they think, if I have more of this macronutrient earlier in the day, or thing, they try to solve it with a food or a nutrition solution. And the solution to stress eating is lowering your stress level. And the solution to boredom eating is having a more exciting life, et cetera. And so an exploration of emotional eating lends itself naturally to helping a person discover what they're really missing, what really the unmet needs are, which are often, they often have strong emotional and mental components to them. I see this happen all the time. People, they have what we might call a physical goal, of losing 10 pounds or lowering their blood sugar levels to the optimal range. And the proximal cause is poor eating, but the deeper cause is stress or boredom or loneliness or fatigue that's driving the emotional eating. So it's a neat opportunity because to solve the weight challenge or the blood sugar challenge, a person needs more than making better food choices. They need to be gaining the self-efficacy to be meeting some of these other needs. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's frustrating to a person when you first present it this way usually, but emotional eating is an opportunity. Someone said it to me this way a few years ago, and it stuck, and I use it a lot. It's like the check engine light in your car. It's there to tell you or to ask you, depending on your perspective, to take a look at your engine and see what's going on there. And in this analogy, the engine is your life. And what we would never do, I'm not sure we would never do it. I would probably have done this when I was more naive about the maintenance that my car needed when I was younger. We wouldn't just turn the check engine light off and ignore the engine. We would know that's potentially very expensive, very dangerous, problematic. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, is that I think because our physical, emotional, and mental natures are inseparable,
yes,
any real exploration of any real challenge almost inevitably brings along an exploration of all of those aspects of who we are.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And it's definitely how therapy needs to be looked at, particularly where we are in this day and age, people having gone through so much stress with the COVID and so much stress with being isolated from each other. I think so many fears also came to the fore. I mean, hugely in terms of health on all levels, hugely in terms of finances. I'm sure, Kristen, you saw where people lost their jobs or they had to change direction, and were quite shocked by the changes. But it's so important that, I think sort of that looking at it holistically, importantly, but now that people understand, it's so important. I think we have an obligation to educate people that everything is connected. You always say, Kristen, nothing happens in a vacuum, and I've heard you say, Jason, where everything affects everything else. So Kristen, jump in with us, and people are coming to you 9 cases out of 10. It's like, well, I have a financial problem, and then you expose actually it's so much more than that. How do you go about it, and what does one do when there's a resistance, and the only how do you break through the resistance?
Well, it's really interesting because it is very similar to like overeating is like overspending. People spend their money for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of times these habits are taught really early on, and it's not even really people's fault. Sometimes it's how they see their parents or someone close to them when they're younger spend, and how their philosophy then kind of grows around finances. But it's also really due to the climate that somebody grows up in. Like, I had a great grandmother who lived to be 107. And so I had her in my life for a long time. And she was
good innings.
Yeah,
Long time.
everybody in my family lives well into the 90s, sometimes far into the hundreds. And so she lived in the Great Depression when she was in her 20s as a young adult, right when she started having kids and everything. So, I mean, the scrimping that she had to do, the way that like molded her, her whole view on money for the rest of her life. I mean, no matter where she was. And by the end of her life, she had so much money in the stock market that she was doing fantastic because she started investing money when she was like 20. So at age 107, the power of compound interest, she was doing just fine. But yet the sugar packets, the ketchup packets, the napkins that woman would steal from different restaurants because nothing could ever go to waste. And she would never throw anything away. And sometimes it would be construed as being a pack rat, but it wasn't really ever a pack rat because she never had anything she didn't need. But, and then you have some people there are so many people who are right now living in this crazy bull market that we have created. I mean, we have had this unprecedented bull market going on for over a decade now. And there is a lot of children now growing into adolescence, now growing into adulthood, who have seen really nothing in their lifetime but abundance in the economy, or at least the appearance of abundance in the economy. So, because a lot of times, the economy is like, there's a lot that gets inflated in the economy to kind of mirror more of a bull market than we have. But you have this entire generation of people that basically live by the code of Ariana Grande. I see it, I like it, I want it, I buy it. And so, and clicking on Instagram, we have this unprecedented amount of AI going on that knows exactly what we want in our brains before we even know. It's very hard to compete against, especially when we're used to always having something and having an abundant economy. So people are coming to me in all these different states that have basically been wired in their brain from childhood. And that's a really hard thing to unwire. So there is a lot of resistance that people meet me with. And as a response to that, I really try to have a dynamic solution. So 9 times out of 10, somebody comes to me because they have a goal, but they don't have enough money to achieve it. So we can go in multiple fashions. We can say, okay, let's contract. Let's budget. Let's take a look. Where are we overspending? That traditional way of like, okay, well, a coffee every day costs this much. And, over a year, you're costing this much. And we can really look at that and we can keep people on a strict, disciplined budget, which some people do really well with. For people who are living in an abundance mindset, the answer is never put them on a budget because they're not going to succeed 9 times out of 10. And I am going to be met with that resistance. And it's really hard to undo that kind of mindset. So what we go from there is, okay, if you're in an abundance mindset, that means there's abundance money. So if you want to spend to this degree and you also want these things as well, now let's get the side hustle going. Let's figure out how to make more money. Let's bring more money into your life to actually accommodate the lifestyle that you've now created and the goals that you are trying to work towards. So based on how somebody is coming to me, where their mindset is at surrounding money, we really need to work on either, a contracted budget view or an expansive, let's bring in more money view. And those are kind of the 2 routes that I take. And at the end of the day, the one thing that I really can't fix, I can help, I can work on it, I can coach around it, but it's the motivation piece. Because unless somebody's willing to work with me and try and put in that effort, there's nothing I can really do. And that's the big stopper for some people. I think sometimes people know there's really nothing anybody can truly do to get you more money, right? But sometimes people go to a financial advisor or coach and the hope or the thought is like, we can wave a magic wand and somehow we're going to find some type of grant or loan forgiveness or something that's going to make it all better. And you're suddenly going to be making tons more money. And that's just really not the case. In some very specific niche situations, it is the case, but it's usually not. And so that motivation piece is where if I don't have somebody working with me in a partnership, I can't ever really get past it. But as long as somebody's willing and trying, we can really go a lot of different avenues based on their psychology around money.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that. Absolutely. It really, if someone is willing and enthusiastic, I think you can do anything, teach them anything, take them as far as they want to go, right? But if they don't, I mean, I've also had a couple of, over the years, clients who are amazing. They're so interested that they exponentially just excel in their practice or whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And then those that actually just want to be babysat indefinitely, who go absolutely nowhere slowly for over a long period of time. And I think sometimes you have to kind of go, you have to put the boundary down as a coach and go, look, make a decision. Do you want to move forward? Or so it's really it's recognizing, like you say, who is sitting in front of you and speaking their language, right? So absolutely, to speaking what it is, what are they going to hear? There was something I was listening to you speak about in another interview. I think it was with is it Scott Fulton?
I think Fulton, yes.
Yes. And in the chat you were saying how, when you do give your clients advice, and say, for example, it's about exercise, of course we know exercise and movement is important, but you have to have a look at the person in front of you and see, if there's no use telling them about how the benefits of running when they can't even, when walking is a challenge. So sort of speaking to them in their language in terms of meet them where they're at and hopefully be able to take them to the next place. And then together, if there's a collaboration and interest, then the path can expand, correct?
Yeah, I think meeting someone where they're at is essential, and yeah, unfortunately there's a lot when people turn to our society and look for solutions, there are a lot of sort of one size fits all opportunities. Like you should get a Peloton bike, or you should do whatever it is, right? And yeah, with nutrition and exercise, and sort of people are sort of putting themselves into these systems, and those systems may or may not work well for them. They might not be enjoyable for them. They might not work for their body at that point in their lives. So and it's funny because that relates to motivation. Sometimes a person will be deemed unmotivated by someone, and they are unmotivated to do that thing because that thing doesn't suit them. And yes, you find the thing that suits them, and all of a sudden they're motivated. So they weren't fundamentally unmotivated. I will speak to something you were talking about earlier too, because I think it ties what Kristen and I do well together. Another aspect of motivation that one way I don't experience a lot of generally low motivation with the clients I work with, and one reason that is the way I structure my coach-client relationship from a financial perspective, which is to have people pay up front for a course of coaching. Now that, because money, we pay for things we value, we buy things we value, it's like a litmus test that if a person is unmotivated to engage in wellness coaching, they'll decide, this is funny because this is more of a values test than a bank account test. I can have talk to two client prospects in back-to-back hours, and they could both have the same income and the same net worth, and I could offer them the same coaching arrangement for the same fee, and one says yes and one says no, and it's because that the person who says yes is ready to engage in wellness coaching. It's important to them at that point in their life, And they see that the amount of money that is my fee for that given arrangement to be great idea right now. And then for the
Yes.
person who isn't ready to make those changes, they see it. Their mental talk would be, now is not the right time, or I think I can do this by myself, even if they haven't been able to do it by themselves for some period of time. That's just a neat litmus test that demonstrates the person's essentially readiness to engage in a process like wellness coaching, or ultimately the readiness to make lifestyle improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it shows up what it shows up. I mean, yeah, be sort of blunt about it, but it shows up where their priorities are currently. If like you say, you have two clients, the same sort of financial sort of ability, but the one says yes, the one says no, the priorities are in a different place.
I think it's, it's
the inquiry is there, so yeah.
It's neat in our conversation of, the unhelpful separation of our physical, emotional, and mental selves is, we'll often think of things like values as being more emotional and mental, but there's sayings going around that are like, show me your life and I'll show you your values. And what's implied in that statement is it's our actions that demonstrate our values, not our thoughts and our words. And I think it's fair to say, I'm curious what Kristen has to say about this, but I think sort of your checking account ledger, what goes in, what goes out, when it goes in, when it goes out, I think it probably speaks to our values.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that is a big piece of like, I come in contact with a lot of people who I coach who kind of right off the bat start off by telling me they're not materialistic people, and what they really value is experiences, and their goals are, all these different things on their bucket list and things that they want. But when we sit down and we take a look at the checking account ledger and we start to really look at the amount of, I don't want to say useless, because I'm sure like, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But, if somebody has, 20 pairs of pants, is another one needed? I don't know. Who's to say? Maybe not me. But when we go through some of these things and I kind of really start to dig into, okay, what was this for? Why did you buy this? Tell me what it is. We need to categorize it, because sometimes it's hard to tell when you look on like checking. There's like weird names sometimes for what people buy. It's like a different corporation. So I go through it with people, and very quickly it starts to be, well, I guess I didn't need that. Well, no, I didn't need that. I bought that. That was an impulse buy. Well, I wanted that because I saw it on Instagram, but once I ordered it, it didn't look as good on me and I didn't send it back. And very quickly we have this very large chunk of really nothingness. That definitely, if you were looking at somebody's actions and behaviors, it would just speak to kind of maybe emotionally shopping, or shopping to, maybe to fill a void, just because we're kind of thrown into this materialistic society. So it's just a product of our society, perhaps, but it definitely doesn't outline the specific goals and interests that the person presents to me in the initial intake meeting. So it's kind of interesting to really look at people's finances and their aspirations in life.
I think also, like, as I listen to the two of you, when I think of committing to, well, I mean, maybe it's just a personal thing, but I've always had this feeling, and when I speak to clients myself, and I speak to them about looking for a wellness or a health coach, or even if it's a financial coach, I realized, listening to you guys, I'm never really thinking of a single session, because I couldn't imagine a single session fixing everything. It is a journey. Coaching is a journey. It's a journey that you guys have taken on to help others. But when people come to you, there's such a journey that it opens up. So, like you say, Kristen, initially they think, oh, well, just help me with this. And I'm, I'm not that. Here you journey them into seeing like, things they wouldn't have seen unless someone was guiding them on this journey. And it can't take one single session, but certainly a session can sort of start opening up that little doorway or that little can of worms, maybe. And I think that's why with you, Jason, when people do have that initial sort of conversation or inquiry, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a series of sessions that you offer because it is a journey, right? So just speaking a little bit about that a little bit more.
Well, yeah, certainly the inquiry conversation can be a one-off, but then when I engage in an actual course of wellness coaching with someone, it's always an arranged series. Wellness coaching, maybe never is too strong of a word. I can't see too many situations where it would work, where a person sort of paid for and engaged in one session at a time, because the effects are cumulative, and the benefits are cumulative. So, and it's easy to start. We have what's called start energy. That's why we decide to start things at the beginning of a year or the beginning of a week, beginning of a month. And so things feel, the sort of things are lubricated with that start energy, like things are easier. But then when we get 2 weeks in, 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, that wears off and things start to feel a little harder. And if we hadn't already committed to a certain number of sessions or a certain period of time, what happens when that start energy wears off and things start to get a little harder is we get into that self-talk. We convince ourselves it's not the right time. We say, I should do this when I'm not so busy. I should do this when the kids go back to school. I should do this, whenever, another time. But if we've committed to a series of sessions or a course of time, when it gets hard, what we do instead of escape is we stay in. Essentially, in my common 6-month arrangements with clients, we're figuratively locked in a room together, and our job is to help that person learn how to take great care of themselves by the end of that 6 months. And since they've agreed to an arrangement, that 6-month arrangement, and paid for that 6-month arrangement, they can't. There's no incentive for them to back out.
Yeah.
They generally, the incentive is to the opposite. The incentive is to lean in to the engagement, whether on the days when it's feeling easy, and to lean in to the engagement on the days it's feeling hard. And that's very, very, very helpful, because that keeps them engaged for a long enough period of time to make progress and form habits,
Yes.
and be doing things that they'll be able to take with them far past our time working together.
Yeah. How long does it take? They say it takes how long to create a habit and keep it? I mean, I know there's a thing where they say it's 21 days.
Yeah.
What is your view on that? Like, how long does it to create these? I mean, we're talking about like real lifestyle habits. It's one thing like, okay, I'll learn to floss. I'll floss my teeth every day because I do it. But real lifestyle changes. How long are you finding people take?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate real world answer to this is it depends. And it depends on, I think a helpful way to think of it is how much obstacles the person is facing to forming that habit. Whether that's time, energy, money, anything else that could be experienced as an obstacle. And then the opposite, how much wind they have at their back. That's all those things I just said, how much social support they have within their family, within their group of friends, within their larger community. Those things respectively slow down and speed up the habit formation process. It also depends on how long they've had their current habits, and meaning, it's easier for a 25-year-old who's been eating a certain way to change to another way than it is for a 65-year-old to do the same thing, because they're the grooves in our brains are simply deeper the longer we've done something or lived a certain way. So it's hard to give a general answer. What I'll say with the the people I work with, I start to see what we might call more cemented habits, usually more like 3 or 4 months into an engagement. And that's when they're starting to say things to me like, this feels easy now. This just feels like part of my life now. I'd say that's more typical what I see in the real world with the kind of people I'm working with and the kind of things we're working on.
Yeah. So when you speak about offering a course, what is your time frame? Is it a 6 month? Do you have like a minimum amount or a maximum, or is it always like 6 months?
Most of what I do these days is 6 months, and what can vary in the different arrangements is how often we meet. So we can meet once a month, twice a month, or 4 times a month for the 6 months, especially depending on how much support a person needs and the size of their budget. Those are sort of the two things that intersect. Most of the people I work with, and I think this works for most people, is we meet twice a month. That seems to be plenty of opportunity for guidance and support, seems to provide plenty of accountability and enough time. A lot of what's happening in a course of wellness coaching is happening between sessions. What I sometimes think of the person doing what we're working on in the wild, so to speak. And with my support, with the ability to reach out to me between sessions, with me checking in with them from time to time. And what I found is that unless a person needs a lot of guidance and support and a lot of accountability, meaning I'm talking about like the 5% end of the bell curve of needing those things, meeting once a week isn't enough time between sessions for them to be implementing what we're working on. So now the exception to that is the person, sometimes this is literal and sometimes it's figurative, but a person who had a heart attack, and they're sort of scared straight, so to speak, by that heart attack. And it's time to make sincere lifestyle improvements. I can't wait. I need all the help I can get. That person will often hire me. They'll say, I've got the money in savings. It's this, they're often at a classic point in life where they have plenty of money and their overall well-being, or what we might call their physical well-being, is at a low point or even a rock bottom. And they say, money is no object and meeting every week is important to me. Let's do that. That's not the average person that comes to me, but some people could use that.
No, I hear you. Absolutely. I mean, I think actually there are a lot of people that only sort of confront the necessity for real change when they are showing the edge. Their health is at stake. They get a cancer diagnosis or some extreme disease diagnosis. And I mean, I just speak from experience where my real changes were only going to take place when I was like shown the edge of that cliff. And I was like, okay, I must do everything. I did. I went to all sorts of sort of wellness and health people and finding the grooves and fixing up the pieces of the puzzle until I could make it my own.
Kristen might be able to speak to this too, but this is an unfortunate, I would never come at this idea from a holier than thou place. This applies to me as much as it applies to anyone else. But I think I'm getting better at this with more life experience. The idea has been repeated across cultures, but it's something like when life or nature or God, whatever your orientation is, has a message for us. It first whispers in our ear, then it knocks on our door, then it burns our house down. And unfortunately, whether it's a heart attack or bankruptcy or whatever it might be, it is an aspect of human nature that until we gain more wisdom, we tend to respond to houses burning down and tend to be pretty good at ignoring whispers.
Yes, no, absolutely. So no, I hear you completely. And then I find myself deciding no, but I want to help people hear the whispering. Kristen, I wanted to come back to you and just, I love the link of finance and health. You also, and I remember we chatted and you've shared how you help people be accountable for the commitment that they make to wanting these changes. What are the techniques that you implement that you find are helpful when you're working with people?
Well, sometimes the things that I recommend to people, and it really depends on the person. I work with people of different ages and they're coming from different experiences. But like we talked about, nothing happens in a vacuum. And so a lot of times when I'm seeing anxiety around money and people coming to me with the idea they're trying to, a lot of times it's just that they're trying to spend less and they know that they need to basically avoid the temptation, but it is everywhere. And truthfully, it's unprecedented in our society right now, the amount of temptation that we have. You scroll on Instagram or Facebook and boom, there's an ad that's tailored to your brain. You go to the store just to buy your groceries, but the way that the store is laid out is just perfect for impulse buys. You go to the gas station just to fill up your tank, but there's a whole beautiful haven full of whatever you could ever want right in the gas station. And you throw a rock and you find an ice cream place, a coffee place. It is just wild how much we are constantly being sold to in the privacy and comfort of our own home, in every aspect of, like, on the way to our commute, on the radio station, on while we're killing time listening to our podcast. And so a lot of times, one of the things I try to really emphasize to people, which I think goes hand in hand with overall wellness and financial wellness, is simplifying your lifestyle a little bit. So sometimes I find that there's people who I'm talking with who have severe anxiety, and it's not just around money, it's around many different things. And sometimes the things that we kind of try to talk about is unplugging a little bit more, whether that is doing a full social media detox and saying, okay, I'm just going to delete my social media accounts, which doesn't work for everybody because some people might be corresponding with relatives far away, or some people might need it for their business or whatever that might be. Or it might be okay, in the evenings when you're bored, this is when we're seeing the primary amount of just random spending. Okay, so this is a really good time to take your dog for a walk. This is a good time where your phone automatically shuts off Instagram or Facebook or whatever it might be. Those little accountability things, like, let's schedule your life a little bit more so those moments when you find yourself bored, lonely, sad, insufficient, those are not the times where you have access, which we all know you always have access, but that's the time where we're going to create little barriers that you are going to find it less easy. And if you were to go onto this social media page, or you were to find yourself at the store, whatever it might be, you would kind of know that you're cheating in the schedule we've created, in the plan we've created. And so it is a little bit more of a barrier and a deterrent. And once again, filling that time with something else. You're bored, you're not doing anything. This is a great time for you to sign up for a class, which, yes, you're going to be spending money to sign up for some type of like a cooking class or a dancing class, but that's money that is giving you the experiences you want, and the money that's getting you out of the house and giving you healthy exercise or teaching you a new skill, and not the money that you are dumping every night into Instagram ads or the convenience store right down the street from your house or whatever it might be. So a lot of times it's trying to just really siphon off those times of temptation and really filling in that space with something more exciting, something more stimulating, something that is more fulfilling. And the hope is that with the absence of the spending, the temptation, but the presence of something more interesting, it takes away that desire a little bit, and it fulfills you with something far more positive and sustainable than, whatever insert material item that an Instagram celebrity is promoting here, you know?
Yeah,
So, and
absolutely.
that's the big piece that I really run into. I mean, I hate to put like, say that that's like the number one thing, because I do see a lot of different people with a lot of different needs, but that tends to be a large issue that I find people face. And it's really tricky. I mean, my goodness, like advertising is out of control, you know, it's hard to fight that. And
Yeah.
so people need a little help and a little motivation to get there. And I know I definitely fall victim to it. I've found myself the proud owner of things that I'm like, why did I purchase that? What was it about that made me need that? So, you know, I totally get it. And it's a step-by-step process.
Mm. And I think it is paying attention to the little things, you know. It's more noticing our small habits, our small daily habits, that are having a greater impact on culminating in sometimes bad decisions or actions that aren't serving, and then at the same time altering the small habits or making these small changes, as you say. It makes it accessible, right? So both of you, I think, sort of show a lot of accessibility to the people that come to you. So that, because I think it's overwhelming. You say change to people as they just catch their breath. I see them like stop breathing, and I'm the one that has to go, okay, now breathe out slowly, you know? So
I do also think waiting as a skill, I think is really interesting. I think it goes against our biology. Even if you think about something like farming, something as like what we feel to be as ancient as farming, which is let's plant some crops and wait for them to grow. That was not like a natural idea. It's like if you're going like way back to like, I don't know, whatever, cavemen, hunters and gatherers, right? Like even just the concept of farming it pushes those evolutionary boundaries and then bring it all the way to here. There is so much delayed gratification in our society, and it is hard to wait. And I think that building wealth, unless you're somebody that has a trust fund or, you know, something occurs like that, it takes a long time, no matter what your profession is, to build wealth, to have like retirement, to have assets, to have savings, to be well off in a way that it is security. Really, it takes a long time to get there. And I think that waiting is so hard, and sometimes you just need a person to check in with, because building wealth, if we make a plan, a 5-year plan that says, okay, you are going to build X amount of dollars in this amount of time to do this thing, and every month you're just going to save $100, it takes a long time to start filling that tank to a place where you're starting to really see those results. And so it's nice to have somebody, even if you're checking in once a month, to just keep on track. Keep that motivation. Remind yourself why you're waiting for this thing and why you're putting this money aside, because naturally our brains don't want to wait. And it's because our biology tells us that if you wait, resources might not be there.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, what aggravated is just this day and age that we're in. It's not at all supporting taking your time. Everybody's on such fast track. There's so much people need to do, and they're so busy. The lockdown being the most challenging times any of us have ever lived through and experienced thus far. Besides for being separated, the hardest thing was the people slow down. The challenges that I came across with people, they slow down, and in the slowing down and learning patience, then they had to hear the chitta-vritti, what's called chitta-vritti, the sounds in their heads, the voices in their heads, the monkey mind, you know. So it's quite a thing, and you're so right. What it does to somebody's sense of acceptance, having someone next to you, just and so what? Someone's holding your hand, or just but supporting you along the way, which is why what both of you do is so important. This is, I think, something I came across, it was as a personal thing, and then working with a lot of people is, and going through sort of life-threatening disease. The theme that came up, that was my biggest fear, I have to admit, was this thing that I didn't realize was this fear of being alone. And I mean, it's such a, it's not just and on the outside, some of us come across as very capable and very confident, but that ultimate sort of leaving this earth alone, having no impact, or if you left, would you be noticed? If and I was sort of at that point. And so the thing that I needed to know, or the question that I was asking before I went through my health scare was, I felt really alone. Like, do I matter? And then with the work that both of you do and the people that I'd seen en route, it was that feeling of just understanding we're not alone. So to do the work that you're both doing, to have people, to be next to people while they're on their journey, or help them through their journey, allow them to expose pain that they didn't know they had, for healing, it's so powerful. So I just want to really thank and commend both of you for the work that you're doing, because it's invaluable, and I feel like it's vital today. Like, it's vital, so that these should be almost subjects in the education system, that the kids start understanding holistic health. What does that mean? And well-being, holistic finances, so that people really, that there's an understanding from a young age, A, you never have to do things alone, and B, it's a process, So I know that Jason is running short of time, and so I don't know where we are. It's like your side 2:31, correct? So I wanted to open it up to questions, but Jason, I don't want to hold you, because you've already given us an hour. Just any last comments just to leave us with before I try and get you back into my kitchen next year.
Thank you for understanding my time restraints. And I think a good note to leave you all on is simply to echo some of the wonderful things you just said, Elaine. That I think one way you said it is, we don't have to go it alone, and it's a process. And that's we don't snap our fingers, or, like Kristen said earlier, wave a magic wand and find ourselves living a different way. We can do big, powerful, amazing things, but we don't tend to do them overnight. It tends to be a process. And I want to circle. The other one is like, just I think huge. And you used a powerful word for it. You said it's vital. Vital is a powerful word. Vital means something like life-giving.
Yes.
And I heard someone say this recently, and I thought it was really powerful the way he said it. It said something like, the base unit of a society isn't the individual. Because we're highly social animals, the base units of society are things like families, tribes, hunter-gatherer bands. Like, in fact, an individual doesn't survive. An individual doesn't
get that.
It's possible to survive as a fairly atomized individual today, because technology is so advanced. But in not too distant past, if you were trying to run a farm by yourself, you weren't going to get too very, very far. And when we were hunter-gatherers, you definitely weren't going to survive as an individual. So
sure.
we're wired for relationship. And unfortunately, there is a notion that we should be able to do hard things by ourselves. And the reality is, we do hard things a lot better in some form of relationship, personal, professional, or both. And I think it's really helpful to encourage people to orient themselves that way, that you were never supposed to do the very hard things in life by yourself. I think that's a good note to leave on.
Oh, that's beautiful. I absolutely love that. Thank you so, so much. Makes me feel like we could have a much longer conversation and more of this.
I was a little afraid that would be an opener to something very deep on my way out the door. But thank you for letting me share those words, and thank you for having me.
Pleasure, Jason. So lovely to see you. Go well, and until I see you next time in the kitchen.
Thanks. And Kristen, nice to see you, and I'll see you around locally sometime soon.
Yeah, it's great to see you too.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Jace. Bye. Kristen, so I wanted to check in with you, and I wanted to see it's a nice intimate group tonight, and I think the reason is there is and guess what, Cape Town, South Africa, there is load shedding. So load shedding in South Africa, I don't know if you know what that is
I think we talked about it the last time.
The last time. So I miraculously seem to still have electricity. It's a rare thing, but the rest of them I know are sitting in the dark, and I'm so appreciative. My friend Michelle is here. She's nodding, but I know she's sitting in the dark, but she's still on screen. The rest of them are here, but they are in the dark, and Marlene is not in Cape Town. So that's the reason why I was a little bit of an intimate group tonight, because so many people are like, we can't wait to come on. But I wanted to, I know, and Sandy and Mark are here sitting in the dark. So I'm so pleased you guys are here. Catherine is here, and they're putting on their videos to say hello. Is there anybody in the house who has, I mean, we have the privilege of having Kristen here, who wants to just ask any questions? Oh, thank you, Sandy. So anybody in the house who just wants to ask any questions financially about wellness, health, direction. I don't know if people have asked anyone who's, I'm just going to go into the chat quickly and just see. Okay. People get so shy sometimes. Okay. Oh, there they are. Hello, Sandy and Mark. Hi. It really is so informal in my kitchen here. It's not podcast style at all. Okay. So Kristen, for me, how would you what's the best advice that you would like to share with us tonight? You know, just ending off moving into the middle of our year, and just looking at how to re-look at finances and health.
I would say some of the best advice is be kind to your older self. I think that we, especially this younger generation coming up, is very much about live in the moment, live in the present. And I think that comes from a previous generation doing nothing but looking to the future and, you know, passing away before ever even realizing the money that they had in their retirement. And so you see the pendulum is always swinging, and it rarely finds itself in the middle. And so what I would definitely say to this current mindset around money that I see in my area right now is just be kind to your older self. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy your life right now, but certainly spread the wealth to your older you, and don't be afraid to contribute money to a retirement fund. Don't be afraid to build your savings. Don't be afraid to save for something. There's a lot of times people have this idea is like, if I don't make a lot of money, I can't save for anything. Even if somebody was saving $10 to $50 a month for retirement or something of that nature, especially when you talk about the power of compound interest. There was this story that came out about this man who was he was a school janitor, I think is what he was. And he never married until he was, I think in his like 40s, and he had some step children. And he, from age 18 on, he had a high school degree, and he worked at the same job, getting very little pay until he passed away in his, I think, 80s. But he started contributing to retirement right when he was 18. And when he passed away, he had over, like, what was it in his retirement fund? It was like over $7 million. And people thought at first he had like robbed a bank or something. They couldn't figure out why it was that he had so much money. And then they realized it was the power of compound interest. So just, I think people really underestimate how much your money can build and grow on its own. You just contribute just a little bit.
I love this. And Michelle's going to ask a question. Yay. Go for it.
Mayo, thanks so much. So living in South Africa, you know, earning rands is very different to earning dollars, obviously. I'm 52, and recently I've been thinking about the fact that I should start contributing to a retirement fund. But it's quite tricky in South Africa. You hear really interesting stories from, I've heard interesting stories from different friends that, you know, because the rand devaluates, you've really got to know who to invest with, just in terms of retirement funds. A friend of mine recently, well, they've been contributing offshore because they're British citizen. They were contributing money into a British account, a UK account, and her husband passed away and lost all of the money because he hadn't started drawing from that retirement annuity. He actually lost the contribution for the last 20 years, gone completely. Can't do anything with it. So you hear all of these stories where, you know, if you don't invest in Old Mutual, for example, you've got to be very careful with who you invest with. I know it's very different in America. Is it not? Do you think it's not better or safer, just from our perspective, to have a savings account or build our own retirement annuity or invest in something else as opposed to a specific, specifically a retirement annuity or retirement fund?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't necessarily think that having annuities are great, because what they do is they offer lifetime income. But I've never heard of an annuity losing its drawing period because somebody passed away before that drawing period occurred. I don't know, like, annuities across the world. I don't really know. I know in America, like, it just goes to your beneficiary. So that, I mean, that just sounds horrible that somebody could lose that much of their savings over the years. I definitely think that depending on where you are, looking into the good options, it's always important. But one thing that people really discount is property. And once again, I don't know, I'm speaking from, somebody in Maine in the US, but I know a lot of older people who are really successful right now in terms of having just a passive income. They don't have to worry about it. They have money coming in every month. They have buildings that they are invested in. And in some cases, as time went on, were able to fully buy an entire building on their own instead of having like a share in it. And having that, especially if they can find somebody else to manage it for them, is a great way to have passive income. Any type of investment in any banking institution that I've ever come in contact with is a great idea. But just having a savings account is good too. The unfortunate thing about savings account is that it is going to be eaten up by inflation. But having money in a savings account that's being eaten by inflation is better than having nothing because the retirement account isn't paying out. Another thing that a lot of people do in America, and I don't know if it's an option everywhere, is whole life insurance policies can be really impactful as, like, basically after tax retirement saving plan lookalikes. Because when you are let's say you bought a $100,000 whole life policy, so when you die, someone's going to get $100,000. You're paying into that every month, let's say, and those premiums are actually building what's called a cash value in the policy. And after you're paid up, that cash value becomes yours to draw on. So if you had $100,000 in your cash value, you could pull that. And then as a result, when you pass away, your beneficiary does not get that $100,000 face value. But if you're, let's say, like 80 when you pass away, you usually don't have somebody that is dependent on you for that money, or you're using it in the present to help that person. So that's another way that people kind of get around retirement savings plans and things like that as well.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Investing in property, I think all over the world, is always a safe bet.
I do too. And I think that people, I feel sometimes like there's such a barrier to entry because you have to save so much money to buy property, but there are lots of different options in investing in property without buying property, like taking property shares. And a lot of people, I think, feel like they have to do all or nothing. I either own a property or I own nothing. And it's not true. There's a lot of different ways that you can be in that industry and getting shares and dividends from it without actually owning the whole location on your own.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great
Thanks.
advice. Great advice. Thanks, Mish. Anybody else in the house that wants to ask any questions? While you're thinking about a question or thinking about being courageous enough to ask a question in my informal kitchen. I just love what you said about being kinder to your older self. There's an image that comes into my mind that I think I've never really considered in such a sort of visual way, you know, until you said, put that phrase together, your older self. And you're right, there was always, certainly with growing up in my culture and with older parents, there was always the concern about future, you know, and concern about what you studied so that you know, landed up having a good degree and having a good job and, you know, saving for when you're older. But it's a very different feel and energy saying being kinder to your older self. And also all of us sitting in the house and we're not kids. And in fact, the interesting thing is, yeah, I mean, our kids are, if not teenagers, but like already in their 20s now, where we have the luxury of looking after, sort of it's time for us to look after ourselves and now consider, hold on, like, yes, you know, where we are now, but there's a reality of us sort of 20, 30 years, you know, and how we're going to look after ourselves then. And, you know, so much life has already gone, you know, we got to life this far, but really considering being kinder to our older selves sitting in that rocking chair, you know, have we put things away to consider that? So definitely a good time, Michelle, and to think about that, and just a beautiful, encouraging thing to think of, you know, the phrasing of how you said it now, Kristen. I just love that, you know, because yes, it's been said 1,000 times, you know, take care of the future. What are you doing? But wow, you put it in a way that was just so gracious and accessible, and it's true, you know. So I love that.
People always talk about there's like a catch-22 to money, that when you're young and you're motivated and you're excited and you have all of this drive and interest to travel and blah, 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 do all the things, you have no money. And then once you eventually gain more wealth over time and you're older and you have money, well, now you're older and you have this money, but you don't, you know, you don't feel as good. You're not as motivated. Maybe you're not as happy, blah, blah, blah. And I hate that idea that people say. I understand the premise of what people are saying, but I disagree. I just think at any age, if you've been building wealth and your dream, let's say, was to hike Machu Picchu when you were 20 years old, and now you're 50 and you finally have the means to do it, why can't you? And I understand that, of course, you're rolling the dice as you get older. You never know, with health complication, things can happen. But if you are somebody that's still physically able to do things, why not live out your dreams. And I think about people like my grandmother, who is right now almost 83 years old, and she still snowmobiles. She a few years ago,
Brilliant.
she took a trip to Europe. Oh yeah, she's wild. She lobsters. I have a commercial lobster license, and she goes out with me and we lobster together. She lives life to her absolute fullest. And she's lucky because she doesn't have any health complications. But I think there's this idea that like life is only fun when you're young, and then you need to be careful and save money so that when you're old, you can take care of your ailing body. And I think that we really need to burst that illusion. Like, yes, that could be true, but also I think a lot of times people, as they age, get more happy as they really become more comfortable in themselves and have more wisdom. And if they are in a health situation where they can still hike, travel, explore, whatever that might be, there's no reason why they can't do it then and have the time of their life. And so, being kinder to your older self doesn't even always have to mean like make sure you have a full retirement fund for when you're 80, but making sure that you have financial stability, because when you're 55, sleeping on a mattress on the floor is not as comfortable as when you're like 20 and you don't have as many aches and pains. And, when you're in your 60s, it's a lot nicer to live in like your dream home and not have to work so hard, and maybe have like a part-time job so you can really enjoy your life and take things slow. Whereas when you're 20, you have more energy to work 50, 60 hours a week, or, go crazy, whatever it might be. So, I think that that's why it's nice to say, like, be kinder to your older self, because it doesn't just have to be like so that you can afford the nursing home later. It's so that you are making sure at every stage of your life you're comfortable and you're happy and you have experiences and opportunities at your fingertips.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And also, because before you blink an eye and, you're 10 years older than you were. Most of us sitting in the house are 50 plus. So it's like, it just happens that quickly, and we're vital and we're alive and healthy and fit. And I want to keep on traveling for a good 20, 30 more years like your grandmother. So it's it stops being so far away, but the action is now, still like, I think, also like, when you're younger, you kind of think age is far away, and then you get to middle age and you kind of like, at any time, you don't know how long your hourglass is, and you have friends or yourself that might have gone through sort of health things. And what I have learned is, do the best you can now, but still continue your dreams and your goals. Don't set them aside because they were for the young person. Like, I've realized a lot of the dreams that I have wanted to, and I have many, many more still, that are, in sight. And it's to keep that going, to not stop the flow. There's something about it keeps the flow going. So, yeah, I love those. I love that expression. So thank you so much for joining us on this very cold winter's evening in Cape Town, but lovely sunny afternoon now in Portland. Please feel free to come and join the kitchen anytime. Thank you for your wisdom, your insight, your generosity of time, and just ease of conversation, Kristen. So thank you for coming to my kitchen again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to come back after a while, and it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, only a pleasure. So let's keep in touch. You take care of yourself, and we'll stay connected. And I'll see you in the next one.
Sounds good. See you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Kristen. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. See you next time. Pleasure, Mish. I'll speak to you soon. Lots of love.